What is up, our Will Feel number one fans and viewers? This is Scott Casey Gale, Will Feel number one. Today, I'm gonna give you my recap and review of The Walking Dead season 7 premiere episode 1 entitled "The Day Will Come When You Won't." And I thought it was an awesome season premiere. I really enjoyed it, and I think that Jeffrey Dean Morgan is doing a phenomenal job as Negan. He really nails it. Season premiere. Okay, let's begin with the recap, shall we? Here we go. Tonight's episode begins now. The Walking Dead starts with blood on Rick's face and crying. Rick says he is going to kill Negan. Negan kneels down in front of him and says, "Speak up." Rick hangs his head a little and then says, "Not today, not tomorrow, but I am going to kill you." Negan says, "Jesus." Negan asks what Rick had, and Simon says a hatchet. Negan laughs and says Simon is his right hand man. He says that's important to save you work. He asks if Rick has one, and then shows his back dripping blood and asks if he whacked his right hand man. Negan says, "Give me the axe," as Simon hands it to Negan, who stands. He tucks it in his pants and grabs Rick up and drags him off to the RV. He says the ones left alive can still be taken down. We see the ground is soaked in blood. Asks Rick a question. Negan tells Rick they're going for a ride and tries to crank the RV. It doesn't turn over and he calls it a piece of shit. Negan asks if he saw what he did and then he threatened to kill him. He says, "Grab the axe and put it through the back of my head." It's in the table. Rick lunges for it and grabs it, but Negan is faster and has a gun on him. He knocks Rick down hard. He tells Rick not to make him get up again. He says dawn is breaking and he tells Rick it's a brand new day. He tells Rick to think about what could have happened and what did. Negan says think about what can happen. He cranks the RV and drives away with Rick. Rick is a mess. Rick thinks about what happens as Negan drives into a walker and laughs. He asks if the gore reminds Rick of anyone he knows. It's a walker fest. Rick thinks about everyone kneeling before Negan. The RV stops and we see walkers outside pointing at the window. Negan says Rick and his people are his. He tells him that the hatchet is his too. Negan opens the door of the RV and we see walkers in the fog. Negan kills one, then tosses the hatchet outside. He tells Rick to go get my axe so we can be friends. Negan kills another walker, then points Lucille at Rick and says, "Get my axe." Rick is out, but he stands. Negan throws him out and shuts the door of the RV. Rick sees walkers all around. We see Eugene crying as he knelt. Rick sees more walkers in the fog and fights for his life. We see Aaron leading, then Abraham. Maggie looks sick. Rick tries to climb on top of the RV, and a walker grabs him. Rick trapped. We see Dylan leading. Rick makes it to the top. Walk sees the RV and is near burning wood pile from last season that blocked the road. He sees the hanging man from last season dangling off on the bridge. The guy has turned around and reaches out for Rick, who collapses in horror. We see Carl leading. Negan speaks to Rick through the roof of the RV and says, I bet you thought you were going to grow old. You were all going to grow old together." Then says it doesn't work like that. Negan tells Rick to think about what happened. We see Negan playing eeny, meeny, miny, mo with the Alexandrians. He makes his choice and chooses Abraham, and then tells him not to move or pluck out Carl's other eye. Sasha starts crying. Negan hits Abraham hard with the bat, but he sits himself up. Abraham goes down. Abraham tells him to suck his nuts. The beating continues to the thickening crunch of blood. Negan beats him to a pulp, and Sasha wails. Negan keeps beating on his body far long than is necessary. Abraham's skull is like a soft, bloody melon. Blood slings onto Rick's face. Negan calls Lucille a dirty girl. He holds the bat in front of Rosita and says, "Look at this." He asks if she was with Abraham, and says, "That sucks." He then says Brett took one for the team. He tells her to take a look. Daryl lunges at him and hits Negan. Others knock Daryl down, and Negan says, "No, no," then laughs. He says, "That is a no-no." He says, "That shit don't fly here." Dwight wants to shoot Daryl with his crossbow, but Negan says, "You don't kill that. You don't kill that until you try it a little." They haul Daryl aside. Glenn goes next. Negan says that that's not how it works around here, and reminds them the first one is free, and then told them that he would shut that shit down, no exceptions. He says they must have dealt with him with some lying assholes. But he's a man of his word and says first impressions are important. He says he needs them to know him. He swings the bat and hits Glenn in the head. Maggie screams and Glenn is upright but struggling and looks over at Maggie. Negan asks if he's still there. Negan says he is trying to speak. His eyeball is mostly popped out. Negan says it's gross as shit. Glenn says, "Maggie, I'll find you." She cries. The others are all bawling too. Negan says, "Hell no," and says this is hard enough. Glenn continues to choke on "Still Alive." Negan says no exceptions and goes back on to beating Glenn. Daryl got Glenn killed. Daryl watches horrified. All of them bawl, but no one says a word. While Negan pummels Glenn, blood splatters all over. Now Rick lies on top of the RV, figuring all this over. Glenn's hand twitches, even though his head is beaten in. Negan says Lucille is thirsty and calls her a vampire bat. Everyone is broken. That's when we get back to the moment at the start of the episode, when Rick told him he would kill him. Rick lays beside the axe on the roof of the RV. Negan tells him to go get him his axe and says, just because they died doesn't mean the others have to. Rick rolls over and stands. Negan says we can give it one more go and says, last chance. He says, bring me my axe, and starts shooting through the roof of the RV. Rick runs and jumps onto the walker hanging from the bridge, but drops the axe. Ain't no party like a Negan party. Walkers below grab at his legs. Negan shoots the walkers out through the back window, then shoots down the walkers because he was hanging on to. He tells him the clock is ticking and says, think about what can still happen. Rick digs himself out of a pile of walkers, gets the axe, and he goes mental, killing walkers while he envisions the others getting hit by Lucille. If he doesn't do this, the door to the RV is locked. Rick pictures Carl getting hit and fights him off. Negan opens the door and guns down the remaining walkers around Rick. He lets Rick back into the RV and holds out his hand. Rick hands him the axe and sits down. Negan says attaboy and slams the bloody axe into the table. Rick glares. Negan has one last test. Negan cranks the RV and drives them away from the walker party. Rick has his eyes closed and then opens them, and then when the RV stops, Negan says, we're here, prick. Negan gives him a little smile and says this must be hard for him since he's been king shit for so long. Rick is flaking out. Negan says losing two of your own in front of your boy is some screwed up shit. Negan pulls out some gaze and alcohol and says you were in charge. He wipes the bloody axe off on Rick's jacket and cleans the blade with alcohol. He says Rick was probably addicted to the power, but can still lead a nice productive life producing for me. Negan hands him the axe and says he'll need it. Wick stares. Negan says take it. Wick is teary but grabs it. Choices and chances. Negan tosses Wick out of the RV and drags him back into the clearing where everyone is. Negan asks if he knows what the trip was all about. Negan tells him the answer. Wick looks at Michonne and Carl and seems ashamed. Negan says it's about the way Wick looked at him. Negan says he needed to change that, but Wick is still looking at him the same damned way, like shit in your scrambled eggs. Negan says it won't work and says that he can give him another chance. He has the bat there, and Wick says yes. Negan pats him on the back and says okay. Negan says what Wick does next decides if this was another crap day on everyone's last crap day. He tells people to put their guns on their head, and each of the Alexandrians left living a gun on them. Negan says aim at their noses, so it'll be a real mess. If you have to, shoot. Abraham and Isaac. Negan calls Carl over to him. He says it again. Carl walks over. He asks if Carl is a lefty. He says no. Negan says good and straps his belt tight around Carl's left arm. Carl looks him steadily in the eye. Negan ties it up and tells him to get down next to his daddy. He tosses Carl's hat aside and pushes him down to the ground on the ground. Negan asks Simon if he has a pen. He tosses one over. Negan uncaps it and says sorry kid, then draws a line on his arm in marker. Wick says please don't. Negan says, me? I ain't doing shit. Negan tells Wick to take the axe and cut his son's left arm off on that line. Negan says do it or everyone dies. Then Carl, then the rest of the Alexandria, and Wick last and eventually. He says he'll keep Wick alive for a few years so he can stew on it. Give Carl a hand. Michonne begs and says they understand. Negan says she does, but Wick doesn't. Negan says this is screwed up, but says do it clean like a salami. Slice and says they have a good doctor. Negan kneels and tells Wick now, chop chop or I will crush Carl's skull myself. Ooh, that was frightening. Wick says do it to me, and he can go with Negan, who says this is the only way. He tells Wick to pick up the axe and says not making a decision is a big decision. He asks if he wants to see them all die, and says every ugly thing will happen. Negan asks if he's going to make him count. Negan counts 3. Wick begs, please, and cries. Negan says 2. Negan cries some more. Negan grabs his face and says this is it. Wick screams in agony and grabs the axe. He looks at Carl, who says just do it. Wick goes to swing, but Negan stops and says you belong to me. It's a brand new world. Wick shakes his head yes. Negan says you belong to me. Wick repeats it back to him. Wick is fully broken. Negan says that's the look I wanted to see. Negan says we did this together, and says the dead guys on the ground get the spirit award for sure. Negan calls this a productive damn day and says he hopes they get it now. Negan says things have changed. He says what you had is over. Negan tells Dwight to load him up and points to Daryl. They shove him in the van. Maggie starts bawling. Negan kneels back down and tells Wick that Daryl has guts and says he's mine now. He says he will cut pieces off him and asks his name. Simon says Daryl. Negan says that sounds right. Negan says he will leave pieces of Daryl on his doorstep or have Wick do it for him if he doesn't obey. Negan takes his leave. Negan stands and says, you're welcome to a new beginning, you sorry shits. He says he'll leave them in a truck and says, we'll be back in a week for our first offering. He then says, top, the Sabres take Daryl and go. And Negan and the Sabres walk away and leave the broken Alexandrians. One of the departing Sabres snapped a snapped a picture of Glenn's decimated body. As they left, everyone sits in silence. Maggie struggles to stand and she limps away. Rick says sit down, but Maggie says no. Rick says they need to get her to Hilltop. Maggie says we have to fight them. Rick's Rick says they have Dale and an army. Maggie tells Rick to go home and says she can get there by herself. She tells Rick to go to Alexandria. Eugene cries into her hands. Maggie says because they were all out here for her. Rick says they still are. Maggie says go back. Funeral plans. Maggie walks away. Michonne comes over to her and says they won't let her go. Maggie says they have to. Rick says no. Sasha stands up and goes to her and says she's taking Maggie. She says she'll get her there and keep her safe. Sasha has no choice and Maggie agrees. Sasha kneels before Rosita and says, I'm going to take him. Rosita nods. Maggie wants to take Glenn. Carl comes to her and says, so does Aaron. They all want to help. Carl stands Maggie up. Rick says, please let us. He's our family too. Eugene comes to help with Abraham. Maggie holds Carl and cries for a moment. Rick thinks about Negan's and says he bet they thought they were all going to grow old together. Rick has a vision of them, a vision of all of them alive. Halfway it's at a family dinner. Glenn as his child on his lap, and Abraham sits near him smiling. Rick picks up the axe, and they get into the RV. A walker comes out, Edward snarling. The long walker staggers around. Rick ignores it and drives away. The creature collapses onto some of the gore left from Abraham and Glenn's murders. Rick drives away and cries. The end. And I thought the season 7 premiere was really, really well done. I just want to say thank you to Stephen Ewan. You did a phenomenal job as Glenn Wee on our 7.5 seasons of The Walking Dead. I mean, I sort of predicted Glenn would die because he died in the comics, but I didn't, and I knew that Abraham Ford was gonna die, but in the original comics, Abraham Ford was shot through the eye with an arrow by Dwight, but this time he was killed by Negan. See, because the TV show doesn't always follow the comics. But anyway, I just want to say thank you to actor Michael Cutlass for 3.5 seasons. You did a good job. He's been on since season 4 and he died in the season 7 premiere. So this episode I would give 5 stars, 2 thumbs up, way up. And Jeffrey Dean Morgan is doing a phenomenal job as Negan. He really nails the scene. I mean, really, really nails it. But anyway, that is all I gotta say. Comment down below in the comment section. Tell me, Scott Casey Gale, what you thought of the season 7 premiere of The Walking Dead. What do you think is going to happen? And how much more are we going to learn about Negan? Anyway, subscribe to me, Will Fuel number 1. Subscribe to my best close friends, BB717, Jade Films, The Console Kid 14. Subscribe to my Western channel, National Western Shooters. Subscribe to the MWS Revolution. Subscribe to, they have 100 subscribers. Subscribe to the MWS Network. Subscribe to the MWS Gaming Channel, Reactions Channel. Subscribe to Mitchell Miate. And subscribe to Global Smith Entertainment, God Soda Hut. You stay classy, live long and prosper, and peace out.